And John, if we can bring up the cover screen of the presentation, or bring up the presentation. There we go. Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bill Bram. I am a professor of architecture, and for the purposes of this event, I am the chair of the Faculty Senate Committee on the Institutional Response to the Climate Emergency. We have a selection of panelists today to talk about how faculty and staff at Penn can reduce their carbon footprint at home. I'll introduce the panelists as we come to their presentations, but if I could have the next slide, John. Can I get the next slide? There we go. So the particular inspiration for this, besides the general need to reduce carbon emissions at people's homes, is a resolution that was passed by the Faculty Senate last spring. In the middle of the pandemic, when many activities were put on hold, the Committee on the Institutional Response to the Climate Emergency, which we affectionately refer to as CIRSE, CIRSE got together to look at what it could do even in the absence of in-person events and outreach. And they came up with a faculty resolution quite different than most of the resolutions that we've seen out there, which usually call on their institution or the government to do something. And largely because we recognized just how much the institution was already doing, we decided to put together a resolution calling on the faculty and staff to in turn do things. We were a little surprised. We initially did that sort of in the spirit of, if we're going to ask people to do things, we should do them as well. But as we did a little bit of analysis, we discovered that the amount of carbon emissions that come from the residences of faculty and staff pretty much rivals the amount of emissions that come from the main campus of the university. Put that the other way, if we could get everybody, all the faculty and staff at the university, to switch their residences to renewable sources, to low carbon sources of power, we would reduce the carbon emissions as much as the efforts being undertaken by the institution. Next slide, please. So we put together a manual. I won't go through all the points of the pledge or all the aspects of the manual, but we put together a manual to help faculty do those things. And key among them is this question of how to reduce carbon at home, how to green your energy use at home, and how to actually reduce the carbon footprint associated with the energy that you use in your house. So today's seminar is primarily dedicated to that question. This seminar, can I have the next slide, please? This seminar will proceed in sort of two sections, a short section premiering a video. So this is a video premiere. I hope everybody dressed for it. A video premiere of a video prepared by the Kleinman Center for Energy Policy to help people faced with the choice of how to change their electric use and to guide them through that process. So we'll start with that. We'll start with that panel, and I'm going to turn things over then to Oscar Serpell, who is a research associate at the Kleinman Center for Energy Policy, and he in turn will turn it over to Abdel Babakir and Ryan Norton, the two Penn students who actually put the video together. Oscar?
Great, thank you, Bill, and thank you everyone for joining today. As Bill said, I'm Oscar Serpell. I'm the research associate at the Kleinman Center for Energy Policy here at the University of Pennsylvania. At the Kleinman Center, I lead a lot of our internal research efforts, and we really do try and involve students in as many of those research efforts as possible, whenever possible. So a few months ago, Simon Richter reached out to me and asked if we would be interested in identifying and supporting a couple of Penn undergraduates to make a video really with the intent of making the PA Power Switch website just that little bit more accessible to Penn faculty and staff who might be interested in switching their electricity provider. So as Bill said, this is a video premiere. I obviously did not dress for it, and I was only minimally involved in the making of this video. So I would like to hand it over to Abdel and Ryan, who were really the the brains behind this video and let them tell you a little bit about their goals for it, and then they will be showing just a few clips from the video. But we really encourage everyone to go watch the full thing, which can be found on our YouTube channel under the Kleinman Center for Energy Policy.
Hello everyone, my name is Abdel and I'm the voice behind the video, and I also helped in writing the script for it. The video I think is very important because I believe that there's a lot of misinformation about energy and climate change in general, and it's just a great way for me to help educate people about this issue, and even making the video was an educational experience for myself. So I hope that a lot of people who watch the video realize that helping the climate can be done in many different ways, not just like, riding a bicycle rather than like taking a car or something. And hopefully we can help the environment. Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan. I was working with Abdel on this project, and we just tried to take the PA Power Switch website, which already is, makes the process easier for switching suppliers. A lot of people find the process of finding a new supplier kind of overwhelming. There's so many options and there's so many different things to consider. So hopefully we use this video as a good starting point for people to just check it out and then see what the options are and like what they can do to just like make that impact, because like just being able to switch your supplier can save you money, but also and have an impact on the environment by switching from fossil fuels to renewable sources. So our video, it's kind of a lot of it's like focused on navigating the website, but then also explaining the nuances between like finding a good deal, different ways to save money, and then like different renewable options. So we're going to show the video. We have four clips. And the first one explains the process of how energy gets to your home. The second shows a bit of the website navigation. The third clip shows the difference between fixed and variable rates when you're looking at your energy bill. And the fourth video highlights the difference between large companies and local nonprofits when you're looking at energy suppliers. So we hope you guys enjoy the little clips we have.
Great, thank you guys so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think, in fact, that video was an even more perfect introduction to the rest of the panel, what the rest of the panelists are about to discuss. So without too much fanfare, let me move to our first presenter, who's Dara Bortman. She's the Senior VP for Marketing and Sales at Exact Solar.
Hi, everybody. I am going to be very conscious of time because there's so many great speakers on. My name is Dara Bortman, and my husband and I, Mark and I, run Exact Solar. Mark started the company in 2005, 15 years ago, and now we have 12 employees, all local, so that's all great too. Great clean energy jobs, good jobs. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about how solar energy systems work on your home. Residential system installation, and I have a feeling we're talking to people who understand that the climate and transitioning to clean energy is important for our climate. So why solar now? Of course, solar saves you money by insulating you from rising electric utility costs. And also, in the end, over the life of the system, which is 25 to 40 years, warranted for 25 years, the price per kilowatt hour coming out of a solar energy system is very low, much lower than what we're paying to PECO at this point. Costs are as low as ever. Solar and wind are technologies. Fuel is free, and technologies only inherently get more efficient and less expensive. So it's only getting better, and prices have dropped over 80% since 2011. You can lock in and cap future energy costs by insulating yourself from utility rates, pays for itself out of savings, offsetting and eliminating an existing monthly bill, your utility bill. Incentives will be going away. Laura will be talking more about all the incentives that are available for solar, but the federal tax credit as one is going down and eventually going away for residential systems. And waiting costs you money. The more you wait, the longer you pay your utility bill, the longer you're using electricity generated from natural gas and coal in Pennsylvania specifically, and of course, saving the planet and reducing greenhouse gases. Please move to the next slide. And do we get enough sun? I don't actually get this question that much anymore, but yes, we do. We get about 4.7 hours on average of sun per day across the whole year in Pennsylvania. We get more sun actually than Germany, and they're one of the leaders in the world as far as solar generation. Next slide, please. I'm going to kind of quickly go through these, and if people have questions afterwards, I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. The main things I want to point out is that when you go solar with a residential solar energy system, generally you're still grid tied and net metered, which means that you're still connected to the grid, so that you still are importing electricity from PECO at night when the sun isn't out, or on cloudy days when the sun isn't allowing your panels to generate as much power as your house needs at a given time. When you're generating more electricity than your house needs at any given time, you're exporting electricity to the grid. And that essentially means you get a credit, a one-for-one credit for all those kilowatt hours that you export. And you can use that credit later when you import more kilowatt hours. So you're essentially using the grid as your battery. Next slide, please. So then the net metered part means that we have a net meter, which, as I mentioned, spins forward and backwards. You import electricity and you export electricity at any point during the day, during the month, during the year. At the end of the year, the goal is that over the course of a year, your system generates around the same amount of kilowatt hours as you use in your home over the course of the year. And so you net out to zero as close as possible with the utility company over the course of the year. I have a little video here that shows you how a net meter works. We can't hear the sound, but basically you see it spinning forward there. We're waiting for the inverters to turn on. This is a new system being turned on. Oh, it's kind of
A little bit jerky.
Yeah, it's kind of jumpy. You might have been able to see that it was spinning forward initially, and then once the inverters for the new system kicked in, you can see that little wheel spinning backwards. You can turn that off. Thanks so much. I like that video because it has my husband Mark saying, "Hugga dugga, look at that thing cook," which kind of funny, but it really does. The spinning forward is kind of slow and measured, and then once the energy kicks in, you can tell in the video it's a bright sunny day, and the spinner just spins backwards really fast as that system turns on and that house starts to export their solar generated electricity and actually spins their meter backwards. Next slide, please. All right, so the main components of a solar energy system, of course, are solar panels is one of them. Solar panels generate DC electricity. And you can see here in the pictures, I've included a picture of all black panels, which we generally use when people are putting panels on the fronts of their homes. I think they look a little nicer. And then black on white panels, that picture at the top right corner. It's the same solar cells and black frame, but a white back sheet. They tend to be slightly more efficient, slightly less expensive, and some people don't like the way they look as much, so we tend to put those on backs of houses to get as much power out of a roof as we can. But there's different options for panels. Next slide, please. The inverters convert the DC current electricity that was generated from your panels to AC current electricity, which is what we use in our homes. And there's two main different types of inverters that we use for most residential systems, or two manufacturers. We use SolarEdge inverters and optimizers, and we use Enphase microinverters. Both of them have a component, either the optimizer or the microinverter, that actually go on the roof right under the panel and ensure that each panel performs independently. So that if there's shade on one part of a roof, or if one part of your roof is tilted or oriented in a way where it's getting less sun at certain points of the day, the other panels in the system the performance of those isn't adversely affected. So it essentially makes sure that all the panels can work independently based on the sun that they're getting throughout the day. SolarEdge has the optimizer under the panel and then a separate inverter on the wall, which you can see that white box next to the circuit breaker box in that middle picture there. But essentially, both Enphase and SolarEdge allow your panels to perform independently and in an optimized way. Next slide. And the other main component of a system is the racking. So most people, I think of solar residential systems as going on a sloped roof, like those pictures that I showed in earlier slides. We also install residential systems on flat roofs. That middle picture in the slide there is a flat roof, and that's a ballasted system. There's no holes in that roof. It's basically trays that the panels sit in, sloped at a 10-degree slope. And it's ballasted with concrete blocks to keep it down. And that's all engineered to make sure that, it'll stay in place with the whatever wind and snow and everything like that. So that's another option we have, especially in Philadelphia with flat roofs, row home flat roofs. We would use that type of racking in that situation. And we also do install ground mounted arrays in some residential areas where they have bigger yards and more space. And the benefits of a ground-mounted system are that we can basically, depending on the yard, face them as close to due south as we can, because that's the ideal orientation in our part of the world, facing due south. And then we can also put them in a space where there's the least amount of shade possible. It is a little bit more expensive to do a ground-mounted system since we have to install the racking for that system. But in some cases, the ability to put the panels in a better place and a better orientation with less shade may actually mean that the ROI of that system will be better than one on that home's roof if that home is very shady or very, has a lot of different angles and slopes that wouldn't be ideal for solar. Next slide, please. I wanted to show you, we use satellite imagery to see a house. We don't even have to go to your home to put a proposal together. We have pictures every 5 months or so, and that helps us put a proposal together. Next slide, please. And then this is basically what our tools allow us to do, basically very accurately measure your roof and put together roof layout. Haven't even visited the house at this point, and with all the satellite pictures, we can tell pretty accurately how much shade you have and put together that proposal. Next slide. And then when you get a system, you have panel level monitoring. So this is the monitoring that you get. You get a website, you log in, you can see your system's production down to the panel level. On the right, you can see this person's array on their roof with each of the panels. If any of your panels look like they're a different color, that might tell you that they're not performing correctly, or they have a chimney next to them with some shade or something. So you have this detail, and so do we as an installer, to see that your system is performing as it should be. Next slide. A couple of additional things I wanted to make sure people knew about. If you are interested in potentially going solar and you have a lot of questions, next week is the National Solar Home Tour, the National Solar Tour. Please go find the website, nationalsolartour.org. They have a week. It's the first ever all virtual tour, and they have a week of really exciting and interesting events talking about not only residential solar, but solar for schools, nonprofits, all that kind of thing, commercial, all that stuff. So great event, and we have a bunch of our customers that will be hosting virtual open houses there. Next slide, please. And I wanted to quickly mention that if you can't go solar, or you can't yet go solar, or you don't own your house, or your house is too shady, of course, the cheapest energy and the best energy is the energy that we don't use. So of course, we should all be reducing our energy usage by increasing insulation, using Energy Star appliances, switching to LED light bulbs. And you can check out a lot of other ideas on how to cheaply save energy on our website if you go there to our Energy Matters page. Next slide. Couple of other things. Electrifying everything in our home is key to really a real transition to clean energy. We have gotten an electric vehicle in our house, which of course we're powering with solar energy because we have solar panels on our home. But even if you don't go solar, even if you don't have your own solar panels, it is less energy. You use less energy to charge an electric vehicle in your home than to use gas in your car, even if you don't have solar panels on your house, because you compared to the electricity you'll use will have some carbon dioxide as a component because it was generated from coal and gas, but it'll use less electricity or less energy than it would if you were going to the gas station with a regular car. So it still makes sense to go get an electric car, even if you can't get solar panels. Next slide. And electrifying buildings is also key. And one thing that we can all do is urge our universities and businesses to lead the way in retrofitting their businesses and their buildings and building buildings that are designed to be net zero as much as possible, or to reduce the amount of energy that they use. Next slide. And this is just a little background on who we are. I already mentioned a lot of this. You can look us up on our website, exactsolar.com, and find out more about me and Mark and all the local advocacy that we do. In addition, if people are interested in knowing about local Pennsylvania legislation that is being proposed in Harrisburg, if someone wants to ask a question about that in the Q&A, I'm happy to talk about bills that are being proposed by our legislators that we should all be calling our legislators about and advocating for, to let them know that we are interested in, and we feel it's important that Pennsylvania does more to transition to using more clean energy and generating more clean energy, because we're losing out on jobs and economic benefit. Next slide. And feel free to call or email me anytime. And I look forward to talking to all of you in the Q&A. Thanks so much. And go on to the next person.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dara. I think you've set up nicely for the rest of the presentations. Our next presentation is by Laura Rogel, who is a solar manager at Philadelphia Energy Authority.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Rogel, solar manager at PEA. You can go to the next slide. Just to give some background, the Philadelphia Energy Authority is an independent municipal authority in City Hall, and we are working to advance clean energy and energy efficiency in Philadelphia. through all of our programs, really see energy as a tool for impact. So I know Dara shared some of the why solar in her presentation, which is helpful, and we're really seeing it through the economic development lens specifically. We're seeing these projects driving economic development, putting people to work, putting people back to work in the wake of COVID, so more important now than ever before, alleviating poverty by reducing electric bills for those who would benefit the most from that, and of course improving public health, both in terms of local air quality and climate impact. You can go to the next slide. Our mandate is the Philadelphia Energy Campaign. So we were funded by City Council in 2016 as we kicked off the Philadelphia Energy Campaign. And this is an initiative to drive the creation of 10,000 jobs over 10 years through an investment of $1 billion of public and private investments combined, really as a job creation platform. So we kicked this off with the leadership of Council President Darrell Clark, and he's been an avid supporter of PEA's work since then. And you can go to the next slide. This provides a snapshot of what we've done so far. The prior slide did mention the sectors we're focused in on, and we have programs and projects up and running in all 4 of those sectors. So we work with the city's Office of Sustainability very closely on our municipal building sector. So for example, we're supporting the city to advance their own climate commitments, for example, to power the city's buildings with 100% renewable energy by 2035. So the Energy Authority, as a quasi-governmental agency, is well positioned to actually hold energy contracts on behalf of the city of Philadelphia for the longer term, so 20 years in this case for a solar power purchase agreement, where we'll be buying electricity that's clean from the solar farm that will be built out in the middle of Pennsylvania. So I want to highlight that one in particular because the city is following through on these commitments that it's made for its own buildings, and in addition to that has programs such as Solarize Philly, which I'll talk more about, to support homeowners to follow through on that commitment as well at the individual level. So I'm inspired to see Penn doing the same, both at the institutional level with their own solar farm procurement, and encouraging Penn faculty and staff who live in the city and own property in the city to go solar as well. So to date, we've invested $136 million in projects and created 1,300 jobs, and we've identified enough projects to get us to that 10,000 job number by the end of the campaign. You can go to the next slide. I did want to highlight that 2019 was a really big year for solar here in Philly. We had a whole package of legislation passed through City Council that's worth being aware of. We did establish a Philadelphia Solar Rebate, which was funded for FY20 with $250,000 by the city to issue as rebates, one-time incentive payments, basically to people who installed solar at their property. The funding wasn't renewed for FY21 due to COVID-related budget cuts, but for anyone who's installing solar from this day onwards, and in this fiscal year, basically, they can be added to a waiting list, and those applications will be processed in the order they're received, and my office is administering that program. I don't know that I need to go through all of these here for the sake of time, but I could also highlight that commercial property assessed clean energy financing is a new tool that was enabled in 2019 by City Council after being enabled at the state level, and PEA administers that program where essentially commercial property owners are able to finance clean energy investments and energy retrofits in their properties through an assessment on the actual property itself. So then the debt actually carries with the property. Even if they sell the property, the new owner would be responsible for repaying that debt. So it allows for longer term investments in clean energy projects that is, typically make more sense for solar to have a 20-year term. So you can really be seeing that payback and be cash flow positive from the beginning of the project. You can go to the next slide. I know Dara actually ran through this, so I think I can just have this here for reference for folks. But I think we can go into the next slide, Dara. I think you did a great job explaining net metering and how that works. And this slide just shows, similar to what Dara had also shared, the degree to which the price of solar has dramatically declined over the past 10 years. So this data is as of 2018, but you'll see how significantly that price has come down. And that's really what motivated us to kick off Solarize Philly here in Philadelphia, knowing that the price had come down, but people still had it in their head that solar was out of reach for them financially. So you can go to the next slide. As Dara mentioned, there's a number of solar incentives available for the residential and commercial sectors, as well as different models for financing those projects. I do want to highlight in particular the investment tax credit, which is at the federal level and allows you to offset your federal tax obligation based on your investment that you've made in solar. So that's currently at 26%, meaning that for 26% of whatever you are investing in solar, so if you did invest $10,000, you'd be able to have a credit when you're filing your taxes for $2,600, which means you'd either get that as a check back from the government or a reduction in what you owe at the time of your tax filing. That does step down, though. It's scheduled to step down to 22% next year and then 0% for residential and 10% for commercial. Sorry, those numbers are switched. And then there's also solar renewable energy credits at the Pennsylvania level that provides another revenue stream to any property owner that's installed solar. You can go to the next slide. This is just more information about the city PPA that I mentioned earlier. So this is the solar farm that will be built out in central Pennsylvania. And I also have the stats here on the Penn project. For a moment, the city of Philadelphia had signed a contract for what was at the time the largest solar farm in Pennsylvania at 80 megawatts. And we were really excited to have that blown out of the water by Penn's commitment to a 220 megawatt solar farm. You can go to the next slide. We've also seen an uptake in commercial solar. One example is the project at 5th and Spring Garden, which houses the Yards Brewery as well as a Target and the city archives. So because the city is one of the tenants in that property, we got involved to help support it to access a state grant for a solar project there. And that project was recently completed and is one of the largest installs in the city. You can keep going. So now I'm going to shift into Solarize Philly, which is really the program I want to invite you all to sign up for today in order to consider solar for your property if you do own property in the city of Philadelphia. And we actually just announced a deadline extension. It says sign up by September 30th here, but we've decided to extend that because of COVID to give people a little bit more time to sign up to go solar at a discount through Solarize Philly. So the new deadline is October 31st. But I do encourage everyone to go ahead and go to solarizephilly.org and get signed up so that you can have a free solar assessment done of your property through this program of ours. You can go to the next slide. To date, we've run 3 rounds of the program. We're in our 4th now, and together they actually make Solarize Philly the largest solarized program of its kind in the country. We've had 654 homeowners sign contracts at the discounted pricing we're able to offer through the Solarize program, amounting to a $10 million investment in our local clean energy economy. You can go to the next slide. We've been lucky also to have many of the homeowners who went solar through Solarize Philly come back and be a resource and share their stories. So we actually have a recording online available of our virtual solar home tour, which will also be available through the National Solar Tour Dara mentioned next week. So it's a great opportunity to be hearing from your Philly neighbors about their experience installing solar at their homes. You can go to the next slide. As part of Solarize Philly, one of our key commitments, and I mentioned it earlier in my presentation, is really making sure that those households that stand to benefit the most from solar savings are able to take advantage of those savings. So in line with that, we've established a Solar Savings Grant Program, which is a program to support low and moderate income households to go solar at a heavily discounted rate. So through Solarize Philly, the prices are already below market rate, but for these households, we've decided to make a grant available for up to about half of the cost to income-eligible households. So you'll see our income criteria at the right, and we actually don't have any FICO or debt-to-income requirements for participation in this program. Instead, we're looking that the applicant has been paying their electricity bill on time for the past year. So if you know of anyone who meets those criteria, we do still have a few spots left in the program for 2020. We're running the pilot for about 45 homes. So that's filling up quickly, as you can imagine, but definitely feel free to send people our way to solarizephilly.org if you think they might qualify. But again, Solarize Philly is open to households of all income levels. This is just a special program within it for income-eligible households. You can go to the next slide. Good. This is just a testimony from one of our homeowners participating in that program. And you'll see the numbers that we're working with for it, which are really competitive and low compared to what you might get outside of this program that's geared towards increasing access for low-income households. Next slide. So just before I wrap up and pass it back, I want to highlight another component of PEA's work, which is our workforce development initiatives. So as part of Solarize Philly, we actually collect a program fee from each full-paying participant so that we can support the low and moderate income solar program and job training programs as well. So we have a commitment to making sure that, well, one, we're meeting employer demand for a trained workforce, and two, that we're making sure the Philadelphians who, again, are positioned to benefit the most from these living wage jobs are able to be the ones stepping into them. So in line with that, we have established two parallel tracks for training. One is for high school students, and the second is for young adults age 18 to 30. So the first one is actually making history this year. We're really excited to share that we recently got approval from the state, and the School District of Philadelphia kicked off the nation's first 3-year high school solar program. So this just launched at Frankford High School this fall. Unconventional setup for the beginning, being on Zoom, and we're in the process of building out a solar training lab at Frankford High that'll be available to the students as soon as they do go back to the school building. But in the meantime, it is up and running. We have a new solar teacher that's been brought on there, and there will be opportunities to engage with and support that program moving forward. So feel free to reach out to me if you're interested. It's the first solar program in Pennsylvania that's ever been offered to high school students through this career and technical education model. So really big deal that Philly's leading the way in that regard. And then we have a parallel track, like I said, for young adults who may have been unemployed or underemployed previously or coming out of incarceration. Then we're able to connect them to a training opportunity that's paid through PowerCore PHL, where they're in a classroom, which you'll see some of them on the right, and then placed into internships and jobs. And our commitment through these programs as well is to diversify the solar industry. So the vast majority of students we're working with are students of color, and we know that the solar workforce is not reflective of the full American workforce. It's whiter and more male. So we're committed to increasing diversity, both in terms of race and gender, in terms of the trainees we're reaching through the program. You can go to the next slide. Oh, here I included some photos of our most recent class of graduates. You can keep going through these. And to the next one. And I did mention this, that we recently rolled out the first CTE solar program in Pennsylvania. You can go to the next slide. Right, well, here's my contact information. Just to close it out, we're really excited that Philly is stepping it up and leading the way through Solarize Philly, the solar rebate, and the Bright Solar Futures program. It's been incredible to see the progress that we've made over just the past 3 years, and we invite you to be part of that. So really do go to solarizephilly.org to check out getting solar at your own property, and feel free to reach out to me if you have other ideas for how we could connect. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura. Each of the questions I wrote down as you got started, you answered. So excellent. presentation and very exciting to see the training program. So our last presentation is by two members of the Energy Co-op, Alexandra Kroger, who's the Energy Program Director, and Meryl Sands, who is the Member Recruitment and Business Development Lead.
Thanks so much, Bill. Thanks everyone for coming today. Thanks for hosting this. And I just wanted to shout out to everyone who's presented already. Thanks so much for sharing such a really great event. And one of the things that we've noticed over the course of just this presentation is that the way that we produce and consume energy has changed drastically throughout history. And as we also noticed, solar is a really great option for some. As Dara mentioned, it's not quite right for every single home. So the Energy Co-op is helping to facilitate the shift of the energy evolution for people who might not be able to put solar on their own home. Next slide, please. So we're one of the options on PA Power Switch, and so we'll use us as kind of an example of some things to think about when selecting a supplier on PA Power Switch and what that process might look like when you do make a choice. So today we're seeing a shift towards clean, affordable sources of energy. Like I said, the Energy Co-op is facilitating that shift. But how have we been able to do that? Well, it's because we're a nonprofit cooperative. Because we're member-owned, we can innovate in a way that corporations can't. We don't have to make a profit. We just have to provide programs that our members want to be a part of. So as a result, we were the first supplier of renewable electricity in southeastern Pennsylvania in 1998. And in 2015, we became the first supplier of renewable natural gas to Pico Gas customers. We spoke a little bit earlier about electrifying everything, which I think is a fabulous goal. RNG is good for the meantime. It's if you don't have the resources to be able to electrify your home, the same way that our renewable electricity program is a great option if you don't have the ability to put solar on your home. So our members wanted to have that type of option and access to that type of program, and that's why we were able to make that possible as the first to do it in southeastern Pennsylvania. And in 2020, just this past January, we were able to expand this program to PGW territory, becoming the first supplier of RNG throughout all of Philadelphia. Next slide, please. So how does it work? So to get a better understanding of what happens when you choose a supplier from PA Power Switch, let's take the Energy Co-op as an example. It only takes a couple of minutes to sign up, and then we would become your electricity or gas supplier. Your bill still comes from the utility. If you smell gas or your power goes out, you still call the utility. But this way, for every unit of electricity you use, your money is going towards wind and solar, or for RNG, for every CCF of gas you use, your money is going toward the recovery of RNG or biogas from the decomposition of organic waste in landfills. So in the last 12 months, the average household paid 60 to 75 cents a day more for RNG, or just under $1 a day for renewable electricity with the Energy Co-op. And there's no interruption of service when you become a member. You'll just see us listed as your supplier on your electric bill in 3 to 5 days, or on your gas bill within 1 to 2 billing cycles, and your distribution charges remain the same. So now I'd like to turn it over to Alexandra, the Energy Co-op's Energy Program Director and Penn alum, to explain a little more about how you get renewable energy when you sign up with a renewable supplier. Alexandra? And we'll go to the next slide.
I think you're muted, Alexandra. You're still muted. Let's see, can I?
Just to go back to, oh, shoot.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Meryl, for that introduction. So to explain what renewable energy certificates are, Dara and Laura did mention that if you install solar panels on your rooftop, then there's a number of financial incentives that can help to pay for that. And renewable energy certificates are one of them. The way to explain a renewable energy certificate is really to think about solar energy as having two different parts. There's the actual electricity that gets delivered to your home in the way that Meryl was explaining, that you would be able to change your supplier. But when you're buying your electricity from the Energy Co-op as opposed to Pico, then you're getting electricity that is backed by renewable energy certificate. What RECs do is they ensure that people who are claiming to supply renewable electricity, and this is the renewable facility generators, are actually doing so. So it's a legal certification of solar or wind generation. Because when electricity is generated, all electrons look the same. So you really need to have a certification like through a REC. And if you have solar panels on your rooftop, you get to sell those RECs to either a utility like PECO that has to meet a mandate, or to a supplier like the Energy Co-op, because we want to make sure that we're fulfilling our commitments to our members. So it's really the best way to think about it is it's a currency to keep track of the renewable attribute of those of that electricity generation. Next slide. So how, as Meryl mentioned, the Energy Co-op is a local cooperative, and it's part of the nature of our structure that has allowed us to innovate in ways that other renewable energy suppliers locally have not been able to. We're not only obviously based in Philadelphia for over 40 years, but we're also one of the only options for 100% renewable wind and solar that is generated in the state of Pennsylvania. So when you become an Energy Co-op member, you know that your dollars are funding renewable energy that is being invested directly in the state. That's if you choose the Pennsylvania product. If you can't, obviously renewable energy does have a bit of a premium price-wise, and Pennsylvania having a mandate is a little bit more costly on renewable energy than some other states. So if you would like to purchase renewable energy, but you'd prefer to look at a more affordable option, we also have a nationally sourced renewable energy product, which is 99% wind, 1% solar, that's nationally sourced. And the distinction is really that beyond buying that product, your dollars are funding our mission, which is sustainable energy within the community of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania as a whole. So how do you do that? You're supporting sustainability through the clean energy outreach and educational work that we do. You're also helping to support community partnerships with other organizations that we are currently working with and have worked with in the past, such as the Clean Air Council, Bicycle Coalition, and the Energy Coordinating Agency. And overall, you're able to support a green economy that means a cleaner environment and clean energy jobs that are more sustainable for the economy as a whole. Next slide, please. So if you have any interest in enrolling with the Energy Co-op specifically on PA Power Switch, it'll take you right to our website where you're able to enroll online. We're theenergy.coop, or you're also welcome to give us a call and you'll get to speak to one of about 5 employees. We're a small team, but we're committed and we're working for Philadelphia, so we're excited to help you move forward with the renewable energy option. Next slide. This is the contact information for myself and for Meryl, as well as for the Energy Co-op and its hours and information. So thank you, Dr. Bram, and to the entire University of Pennsylvania community for giving us the opportunity to present to everyone today.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexandra and Meryl. Excellent presentation. And for everybody out there, this will be, the recording will be posted so you can follow up with any of the information you saw. We only have a few minutes left, but we have, I have a couple questions, but we have some that have been posted. Let me just check and see. Yes, so first question is, I think this is for anybody who wants to answer this. If there's a power outage after a storm in your neighborhood and your house is solarized, do you have electricity in your home?
I'll take that one. This is Dara. I did answer this quickly on the sidebar. No, if you have a standard grid tied net metered solar energy system on your house, your power will go out just like everybody else's when the utility grid goes out, and that is a safety feature so that you don't export electricity over the utility wires when the utility has people out fixing it. You can install battery backup, which is an additional component that you'd need to install that includes batteries and an inverter charger to isolate your house from the grid and run your critical loads, not generally your whole house, but your critical loads like your refrigerator, sump pump, well pump, a few outlets when the power goes out. And that will get recharged by your batteries, and the batteries will get recharged by the sun from your solar panels as long as the sun comes out each day. So you should be able to run relatively limited time as long as the sun keeps coming out. So that's the answer.
We're counting on the sun continuing to come out. But if I could follow up, so just in general, or at least I guess in your practice, how many people are opting to add batteries, and I guess it's the synchronous inverter that allows them to isolate from the grid?
Yeah, so it's a growing number. It's still more expensive to install batteries than a generator, a whole house generator, for example. And of course, a generator will generally run your whole house. Whereas battery backup, it's just still quite expensive to install enough batteries to run an entire suburban or Philadelphia home, because we use a lot of stuff that uses a lot of energy, unfortunately. So, so more people are doing it. The prices, I think, over the next 5 years will come down precipitously, and the efficiency of batteries will also increase a lot. And there's more and more manufacturers coming out with products. So just as prices came down with solar panel installations over the last 10, 15 years, batteries is the next generation of technology that's going to go through that evolution.
Excellent. So thank you very much. We have another question in the chat, which is, I think for the Energy Co-op presentation. What is the PA mandate on renewable energy, and why does that make renewable energy more costly?
I love that question. Please, Alex, take it away. I was just going to ask if you wanted to take it or if you wanted me to. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. So the renewable mandate in Pennsylvania, it's actually, it's on a step-up schedule. So the final year of the schedule is actually in 2021, and that'll essentially mandate 8% of electricity generation in the state to be from renewable sources. 0.5% of that would be from solar energy. I would say that the state is a bit overdue to upgrade that mandate schedule so that we can increase the share of the state's renewable generation, but it's not a fixed percentage year over year. After 2021, however, it would be fixed at that 2021 level if it doesn't increase through legislation.
One thing I'd also add to that is that in Pennsylvania, we actually have an alternative energy portfolio standard as opposed to other states, many of which have renewable portfolio standards. So that 8% encompasses a lot of different types of alternative energy, not just renewable energy that we think of when we think of renewable energy like wind and solar power and even hydro. It also includes coal mine methane, wood pulping made in and out of state, and all sorts of other creative types of energy generation that I had never heard of before I started working with this specific topic. So it's important to know that, and when you're shopping for a supplier, it's important to realize that if a supplier is just saying renewable energy or alternative energy, you want to make sure that you know exactly which sources those are to ensure that you're getting wind and solar power like you want to be getting, if that's what's important to you. And the reason that makes renewable energy more costly in Pennsylvania is because if we had a higher mandate for renewable energy in our state, the supply would increase because the investors who invest in generation facilities would know that there would be a guarantee of a certain amount of a market in our state. Because there's not, we have a lower supply, but there are a lot of Pennsylvanians, like all of us here today, who really care about local power, which makes the demand high, and that makes the price more expensive. I hope that answers your question just on a kind of base level.
I want to also just jump in one additional point, Meryl, to yours. I mentioned that there's a specific solar requirement. So in the Pennsylvania law, I don't want to get too technical, but there's tiers, and tier 1 is what we might consider the higher quality renewable energy generated from some such sources as wind. Tier 2 would cover the perhaps lower quality renewable generation like coal waste facilities, which I don't really consider that renewable at all. But just want to clarify that it's not that 8% can be fulfilled through coal waste. The state does designate a large portion to be from tier 1, which would be the higher quality renewable energy.
Excellent, thank you. So we are we are actually at time, and I see a number of other questions in the chat, some of which I think, if I'm reading the facial expression correctly, Dara might have been answering online, but we have one slightly more general one, which I'm going to pose, and then we'll wrap up. The more general question was, for switching the energy source from your house to clean energy with PECO or through PECO, what if the energy generated from the clean energy farm is not enough to cover the entire energy needs? The energy needs of those who choose to switch the source. Will PECO power these houses with traditional energy source in this situation?
Should I take that one?
Please.
I think you should take that one.
So when you pay your bill, right now, before you've chosen a supplier, there's only one line on your bill that it says electricity, that hides that you're paying for two things, generation and distribution. When you select a supplier, your supplier takes over the generation portion of your bill, but your electricity is still distributed through the utility, such as PECO. So as a result, you get the same reliability that you've always had with PECO. If your power goes out, you still call PECO or whoever your utility is, your bill still comes from them, and all of that stays the same. So you're still getting your power from the grid. It's just that for every unit of electricity that you're using from the grid, your money, when you pay that bill each month, is going to generation from renewable sources if you select a renewable supplier, or whatever supply that your supplier is using.
Excellent.
Does that answer that question?
I hope. You answered my understanding of the question, and I hope that answered their understanding.
I'll take it.
Yes. So sadly, we're out of time. This was really an incredibly informative session. I will say, for those people who have outstanding questions, either that didn't get answered in the chat or think about them later, obviously all of our presenters here today are in the business of helping you solve these problems and answer these questions. They've posted their contact information, but also their companies are, easy to find. So I would encourage everybody whose interest has been piqued by these presentations to follow up with them about specifics. As I think they've made clear, they've been in the business of making this easier for people, making it easier to understand, making it easier to do, and obviously it's such a different world now that this is not just cost competitive, but often cost saving. So if we were in person, I would ask everybody to join me in thanking you guys by applauding, but we can do our now ritualized virtual applause. Thank you, everybody. This has been a great one for me. I think we're done, John.